So whatever Dharma discourse we do on the part of the teacher, there should be a correct motivation, pure motivation, and also on the part of the disciples, those listening to the teaching, they should have the pure motivation. And with these two there, then the teaching will be in accord with the Dharma. Otherwise, if the teacher wishes or expects gains of money and wealth and so forth, then it's not going to be a Dharma text. And then on the part of the disciples, if you think that, I received this teaching this many times now, and also to show off to others that you have received such and such teachings, and boasting about receiving the teachings and trying to teach others, that also is not going to be good. And therefore, what is needed is that the Dharma itself should become a really spiritual teaching. And so with regards to taking refuge in the three jewels, for example, there are the three faiths, or one is admiration, the other conviction, and then the other aspiration. So in order for myself to become an object of refuge, that's the aspirational aspect of the faith. And so when your Dharma practice, spiritual practice, is influenced by or that of taking refuge, then it becomes Buddhist practice. And then when the Dharma practice is influenced or imbued with this aspiration to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings, which is bodhichitta, then it becomes a Mahayana spiritual practice. So when you say, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I become enlightened, you are taking refuge in the three jewels, which makes you a Buddhist, and then which makes it a Buddhist practice. And when you say, through the practice of generosity and so forth that I have done, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings, that is the practice of bodhichitta, or generating or developing bodhichitta, which makes the practice of refuge that of the Mahayana practice. The practice itself as a Mahayana practice, the great vehicle. So let us recite this prayer together. To the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, I take refuge until I attain enlightenment. May the practices of my practice of generosity and so forth become a cause for me to become a Buddha, to benefit all sentient beings. To the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly, I seek refuge until I am enlightened. Through the practice of generosity and so forth that I have done, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So when reciting this verse, if you say, may through the collections of the practice of generosity and so forth, you are actually including that of the practice of wisdom. But if you ask, in the verse, there's no mention of wisdom as such. When you say, I seek refuge until I'm enlightened, and through my practices of generosity and so forth, also you come across the term I. So when you have some understanding of, if you have studied some philosophical ideas, you'll find that the psychophysical aggregates are not you. The collection of the psychophysical aggregates are not you, and nor something the I. You are separate from these. But you say, although there is no independently existing self, So although there is no independent self as such, but the self or I is designated on the basis of the psychophysical aggregates. And when you actually do this prayer or say this prayer and think along these lines with the understanding that everything, including the objects of refuge, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, are merely imputed or designated. Within that understanding, then of course it may not be the actual collection of or the wisdom, but it will resemble that. So that is about bearing the correct motivation to listen to the teaching. Now, to begin with the teaching, let's go through the remaining part of the text. So we are on the meditation chapter. So single-pointed concentration. Regarding that, what does it mean? Whatever object you have chosen, it's not only that you are able to fix your focus on that particular object, but it should lack that of distraction towards other objects. And so while devoid of that kind of distraction, and you may be able to focus on the object clearly, you should be able to focus on the object clearly without dullness. So while developing this kind of concentration, single-pointed concentration, you could have dullness, which is also a part of the dullness is what is called mental sinking. So if you are actually visualizing a form of a deity, you may have a clear idea or of the deity, but then there could also be the dullness falling on in your mind. But most important thing also is whether you are focusing on a deity body or meditating on impermanence and suffering and selflessness and so forth, emptiness, you should have alertness of the mind. So that alertness is necessary. So it's not just having a clear focus, but when your mind, while focused on the object, is dull and having not so clear clarity in it, that's dullness or mental sinking. So some meditators have told me that after having done meditation, their mind is actually turned out to be more duller. There is no clarity in their mind. So when you develop single-pointed concentration, it's not only the case that you are able to fix your mind on the focus single-pointedly, but there should be alertness in it. So in this meditation chapter, as we are going through this chapter, I just wanted to mention this, that when you develop single-pointed concentration, your mind should be devoid of both excitation, which is a distraction towards essential objects, and that of the mental sinking, where there's dullness, laxity in the mind. So when you are able to really develop this kind of fixed concentration, single-point concentration, what happens is it could also activate the wind energy. We are not talking about tantric, using the tantric techniques of using wind energy, but just some form of energy that goes with the mind. And so when your mind is focused well with alertness and clarity and without excitation and dullness or laxity, then it could activate the wind energy, which develops further that of mental pliancy and physical pliancy, and thereby you are able to develop, through these pliancies, that of the single-pointed concentration. on the object. And then, after having developed this single-pointed concentration, devoid of both excitation and laxity, then you could use that single-pointed concentration to do analysis into the nature of things. Not just focusing meditation, but also analytical meditation. So with regard to the analytical meditation, this what is called the insight, penetrative insight, this is also something which is shared with the non-Buddhist practitioners, non-Buddhist tradition as well. But what they use this kind of meditation in is to actually differentiate between the superiority of the higher realms of existence and the lower realms of existence. For example, they see the difference between those of the form and formless realms, Rupa Dhatu and Arupa Dhatu, and comparing them with that of the desire realm, the Kama Dhatu. The desire for the Kama Dhatu is more gross, and then compared to it, those are the experiences of the Rupa Dhatu and Arupa Dhatu are more subtler, and therefore they try to develop those subtle experiences of the upper realms of existence by doing this kind of single-pointed concentration and then developing that of the penetrative insight. So I hope to visit Kumbh Mela, where I hope and I expect to meet some non-Buddhist meditators. In previous times, although I attended Kumbh Melas, I had not the opportunity to meet with such practitioners. And so this time when I go, I make sure I could meet them. And I actually had meeting with some non-Buddhist practitioners, and I have asked them about these three realms of existence, Kama Dhatu, Rupa Dhatu, and Arupa Dhatu. And I asked them why, what is the reason for these three realms of existence? Although it is not clearly mentioned in our text, but there is a grosser state of mind in the Kama Dhatu, this desire realm that we are in, and when you develop that of the special insight, which discriminate or discern the superiority of the Rupa Dhatu experiences and the inferiority of the Kama Dhatu experiences, from there, once you have developed that of the single-pointed concentration within the Rupa Dhatu or of the Rupa Dhatu, then you can also develop further into the subtle experiences of the Arupa Dhatu, within which there are those of the infinite space, infinite consciousness, and then there is non-perception, and then the peak of cyclic existence. So these four are differentiated on the basis of the subtlety of experiences of concentration within the formless realms. And so you can't just say that, these are there, these four Arupa Dhatu's realms of Arupa Dhatu, the formless realm, are there because the scripture says so. But if you actually think along through reason, you may be able to actually explain them through reason, that there is a subtlety within the states of mind that you can develop. Taking from those of the desire realm up to the peak of cyclic existence. So, in this chapter on meditation, what is taught is that of the single-pointed concentration, and the purpose of it is to develop supramundane or transcendent penetrative insight, not only the worldly type of penetrative insight, but after having determined the final reality of things and understanding it well, then when you are able to focus your mind on that final reality or truth of things, it helps to reduce the desire RAM, just as that of the concentration of that is the formless RAM concentration helps to reduce that of the desire RAM attachment. Likewise, this kind of reality of things, which you first study, and then through your study you reflect on it, and then through reflection gain conviction in it, so that you develop that of the understanding based on reflection. So this insight is now used to counter our ignorance, which is the root of all our mental afflictions, the kleshas. Just as 400 verses says, that just as the physical faculty, sensory faculty permeates all other faculties, likewise that of ignorance permeates all other negative thoughts and emotions. And to counter this ignorance, 400 verses says that we should develop that of the wisdom of selflessness. And Master Chandrakirti also, in his Madhyamaka Avatara, the introduction to the middle way, says that though we have this perception and the clinging to things as if they have some kind of objective independent existence, which is called the ignorance, which is the grasping at some kind of independent true existence. So if things were to have that kind of existence, just as this ignorance holds on to, then the more we delve into its nature, it should become more clearer and clearer, but that's not the case. That's not the case. And therefore, according to Prasangika Madhyamaka, it is said that things do not have any independent objective existence whatever, but things do exist merely by way of designation. And so in the Madhyamaka treatises, there is this explanation of and the demonstration of the subtlest selflessness. And so the more you become familiar with this final reality of things, your attachment to the gross objects is reduced more and more. And so in Master Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamaka Karika says, liberation is attained by ending or exhausting those of karma and delusions. And karma and delusions themselves arise through our mental conceptual construct, and that in turn is rooted in the fabrication, and that is done away with or by that of the emptiness, wisdom of emptiness. So we should understand how we can reduce the intensity of the negative thoughts and emotions that are within ourselves. And so, having studied these texts on Madhyamaka and others, then you will be able to actually see how liberation or nirvana is possible. And so, this kind of wisdom that is developed, which is the wisdom realizing selflessness, or this is called the supramundane or transcendent wisdom, penetrative insight into penetrative insight. And in order to overcome, if you meditate on emptiness, in order to overcome even those of the cognitive obscurations or obscuration to knowledge, or purpose of you are meditating on emptiness or selflessness for the full purpose or the complete or totality of the purpose that you actually aspire to attain. And so when your meditation on emptiness is coupled with or imbued with that of the bodhichitta, the aspiration to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings, then that meditation on emptiness is called the meditation on emptiness with the supreme aspects, which that wisdom will serve as antidote, not only to overcome the mental afflictions, the negative thoughts and emotions, but also that of the cognitive obscuration or the obscuration to knowledge. And thereby, having overcome that obscuration to knowledge, you attain that of the omniscient state of Buddhahood. If in the past I had practiced 157 on this act of exchanging self and for others, the situation such as this, devoid of the magnificence and bliss of a Buddha, could not possibly have come about. So what actually counters our clinging to some true independent existence is this ignorance. And then we also all kinds of misfortunes befall us because of also the self-cherishing attitude. Though we want happiness, we are devoid of it. Whereas though we do not want suffering, we are always under the sway of suffering. So, this clinging to true existence, supported by that of self-cherishing attitude, actually causes all misfortunes and ruin us. And so now what you are thinking is that you will revolt against these two, not being subject to that of the self-cherishing attitude and this grasping at true existence. So if in the past I had not practiced this act of exchanging self for others, a situation such as this, devoid of the magnificent bliss of a Buddha, could not possibly have come about. Verse number 57, of this chapter 8. Therefore, just as I have come to hold these drops of servant blood of others, likewise through acquaintance I should also come to regard all others. Having thoroughly examined myself to see whether I am really working for others or not, I shall steal whatever appears to my body and use it for the benefit of others. I am happy, but others are unhappy. I am high, though others are low. I benefit myself, not others. Why am I not envious of myself? I must separate myself from happiness and take upon myself the suffering of others. Why am I doing this now? In this way I should examine myself for faults. Although others may not do something wrong, I should transform it into a fault of my own. But should I do something even slightly wrong, I shall openly admit it to many people. By further describing the renown of others, I should make it outshine my own. Just like the lowest kind of servant, I should employ myself for the benefit of all. I should not praise my naturally fault-ridden self for some temporary good quality it may have. I shall never let even a few people know of any good qualities I may possess. So this is talking about going against that of self-cherishing attitude. In brief, for the sake of living creatures, may all the harms I have selfishly caused to others descend upon me myself. So up to this, Shantideva is actually teaching us to revolt against the self-cherishing attitude in a gentle way. Now he is using a more aggressive method. I should not be dominating and aggressive, acting in self-righteous, arrogant way. Instead, like a newly married bride, I should be bashful, timid, and restrained. So far, we have not seen the faults of self-cherishing attitude and also grasping at some true existence and of things and self. Actually, we see this self-cherishing, that of the grasping at true existence as valid. So things appear to us as if they have some kind of objective existence, and that grasping is called ignorance. The seventh Dalai Lama says, your mind, influenced by sleep, sees all these mirage and all forms in dream. But if you actually look at how things exist, they do not have any objective independent existence, but they are merely designated. But to ordinary look at this perception of ordinary beings to whom things appear as if they have some objective independent existence. And so it is very important and dear to us to counter this ignorance, which is grasping at the true existence, objective existence of things. So when I look at you, you appear as if you exist independently. But when you look at me, you perceive that I exist objectively. So if these way of existence, the way they appear to us, were to be true, then you should be able to find, when you search for that self or the person. Of course, we think my this, my that, and if that the notion of an I that you have when you think these were to have any objective existence, you should be able to find it, but you can't find it when you do this kind of analytical, critical analysis. And so I was talking about the objective independent existence, and with the help of it there is also the self-cherishing attitude which holds one so dearly. So when you are able to confirm through reason and to experience that yourself does not exist independently, and then also when you see that self-cherishing attitude is the cause of all misfortune to you, thus, O mind, you should think and abide in this way and not act selfishly as before. If under the control of self-cherishing you transgress this code, your selfishness will be your end. However, mind, although you have been advised, if you do not act in a like manner, then since all misfortunes will entrust themselves to you, you will only be destined to destruction. That previous time when you could overcome me is now past. Now I see your nature and your fault, and wherever you go, I should destroy your arrogance. I should immediately cast aside all thoughts and so forth. Holiness. (177). And then with 178, in the end, my body will turn to dust, unable to move by itself. It will be propelled by others other forces. Why do I grasp this unbearable and unclean form as I? Whether it lives or whether it dies, what use is this machine to me? How is it different from the cloth of hell, earth? Oh, why do I not dispel this pride? Having accumulated suffering for no purpose because of my honoring and serving this body, what use is attachment and anger for this thing that is similar to a piece of wood? So to this body there is all these faults of going through the suffering of birth, aging, sickness and death. So by using this human intelligence, you should be able to develop the wisdom, realizing impermanent selfishness and selflessness and so forth, and also holding others to be dearer than oneself. So all our misfortunes that have befallen us are due to our destructive emotions. And now you should be alert and try to find out whether it's possible to overcome these negative, destructive emotions or not. So the chapter 8 is done. So by reflecting on bodhichitta, you should dedicate your body, speech and mind. Whatever actions you do are for the benefit of others. As we usually say this prayer that comes in the 6th session Guru Yoga practice. From now on, I shall dedicate my body, speech, mind and resources and all the virtues. And then in Ratnavali, Master Nagarjuna also says, dedicates one's own body, speech and mind for the benefit of others. So these are not only about one lifetime. And Master Shantideva also says, may I be the sustenance, myriad of sustenance for the benefit of all sentient beings, like those of the earth, space and the elements, the great elements. Although we may have this good heart, bodhichitta, we cannot overcome that of through this we cannot overcome alone, we cannot overcome this the destructive emotions, because love or affection are not diametrically opposed to that of the grasping at true existence. Although this verse comes from Brahmanavartika by Dhammakirti, the logic is the same in Madhyamaka as well. Therefore, in order to overcome this fundamental ignorance, grasping at true existence, we need to develop the wisdom, realizing the final reality of things. And therefore, the text says, the sage propounded all these branches of teachings for the sake of wisdom. And so with regard to the wisdom, of course there is the wisdom related to the conventionalities of things and then the ultimate nature as well. So all the other practices that have gone before in this text are meant for the developing wisdom. Therefore, those wishing to pacify suffering should generate wisdom. So all the destructive emotions give us suffering, and these destructive emotions are rooted in ignorance. we cannot uproot it through prayers or by visualizing ourselves as deities and so forth. You need to actually logically be able to prove that the way things are held on to by this ignorance, the fundamental ignorance, holding on to intrinsic nature of things, is actually not true. And so quantum physics also helps to think along the fact that things have no objective existence. It helps me to, when I meditate on things having no existence, the way they appear to us. So quantum physics also says that objective existence, there is no objective existence. So with regard to the wisdom, as I mentioned earlier, it is this aspect of the intelligence which sees the reality of how things are. So the final reality of things. So the way the things appear to us, to our sensorial perceptions, within that perception, what happens is things appear as if they have some objective existence due to our imprint on our mind of the true, grasping at some true existence. So the reality of how things are cannot be explained only on the basis of appearance, and therefore we need to go deeper into how things really are, their nature, and therefore we talk about the two truths. So if you have to develop this wisdom realizing the true final reality, you need to understand the two things, how things appear and how things are. Conventional and ultimate, these are accepted as being the two truths. So even the non-Buddhist traditions of India do assert the two truths. So in other words, you have to differentiate between, what is done here is differentiate between the appearance of things and how things are. So the ultimate is not the object of mind. So the mind which is dualistic cannot realize this ultimate reality. So the conventionality of things are to be accepted the way things actually appear to us. So the ultimate is not the object of mind. The mind is spoken of as conventional, and so here the mind is refers to that of the dualistic perception. So in the later, through their difference in their intelligence, yogis too are undermined by the higher ones. So in Tibetan, the translation for these words, intelligence and mind are same law, but the Sanskrit word for these two should be understood differently. The world is seen to be of two types, yogis and common people. So on this earth, there are generally human beings in general, and then the yogis here refers to those who think through and they call perceive reality and have a deeper thought. And so the yogis and common people are the two types of beings. In other words, those who do delve into the nature of things or critically analyze the nature of things are yogis, and those who do not are common people. The world of common people is undermined by the world of the yogis. So when we say, where is the hill? We say, it's there. But from the perspective of the quantum physicists or quantum physics, there is no objectively existing mountain or hill. It's through the difference in the intelligence, yogis too are undermined by the higher ones. And so those who do critical analysis into the nature of things, such people, the yogis, may it be non-Buddhist tradition practitioners who assert some independent self, permanent, single and autonomous self, or as mentioned in Brahmanavartika Karika and so forth, which criticize such theses and undermine them, this kind of philosophical assertion of the non-Buddhist traditions. So even amongst the Buddhist practitioners who do assert some kind of an Atman or a soul or independent self, which is self-sufficiently, substantially existent I or self, so of course, when we relate exchanging self, equaling and exchanging self and others, we of course do accept that others and oneself exist. But what is countered is this the independent self. And accordingly, we do generate that of those of attachment and anger and so forth. So even though one may have gained some understanding of selflessness, of persons, rejecting that of the self which is permanent, single and autonomous, or a self which is substantially existing, self-sufficiently substantially existing self, but that those alone cannot do away with the fundamental grasping at self. So because of this self-grasping, what happens is, in relation to you, when you say, see something that is attractive, you grow attachment to it. And so, to a certain extent, the grosser understanding of selflessness helps us to reduce attachment, but it does not uproot that attachment. And so when you are able to prove that there is no self of phenomena, the Chittamatras say there is no external existence of things. It may help to reduce attachment to things outside, as they say that there is no external existence, but the things are merely the reflection of our perceptions, the imprints that are left on our perception. And so the Chittamatra view of selflessness will not cannot counter this, the grasping at the true existence of mind or consciousness. The internal world of mind or experiences cannot be countered, whereas the madhyamakas, when they say that things have no, whether it's object outside or the perceptions, the subjective experience, they say that there is no true existence in them. But within the madhyamakas, there are those who still assert that there's some objective form, objective existence, and there is therefore a great difference between those madhyamakas who say that there is not even any objective existence whatever. Suchangya Rebbe Dorji says that in the face of, on the face of that, my mother, and which is he refers to emptiness, there is no solidity in things. So in order to understand these things, you need to really study the Madhyamaka texts. As I mentioned before, we need to study the 13 classic texts, within which there are the Madhyamaka texts, such as the Mula Madhyamaka Karika, Madhyamaka Avatara, and the Chatushataka Shastra. So it's not enough just to read the text and understand the words. Just the superficial understanding is not enough, but we need to go through the process of the Indian masters, how they related the different philosophical views through critical challenge, and then establishing one's own position, and then rebuttal of criticisms to their position. And so when we actually go through logic, we of course use some reason, and there should be some kind of commonality between the two people who are debating. And so it says here, a thesis is proved by examples accepted by both. Unanalyzed practitioners train for the result. So the Madhyamakas who have realized emptiness, of course they still do accept the existence of form, sound, and so forth. So of course they, even though they may have realized emptiness, they would still feel hungry and thirsty, and they would have to take meals and tea and so forth. So that shows that things do exist. So when the Madhyamakas say that things have no objective intrinsic existence, they are not denying the existence of things, but what they are rejecting is that of the independent existence of things, because things are dependently arising. And therefore, when they say things have no independent existence, they are saying that things do not have any objective, true, independent existence. Otherwise, the Madhyamakas do assert or accept nirvana, samsara, and bad and good things, and so forth. What the ordinary people, the worldly people, say is that things exist the way they appear to our perceptions, whereas the Madhyamakas say that they do not exist the way they appear to our perceptions. And Master Nagarjuna says that what arises through dependence is said to be empty, and that is said to itself is said to be designated, and that is a middle way. The world sees things and conceives them to be truly existent, not like an illusion. In this regard, there is dispute between the yogis and the world. So the Madhyamakas, the yogis, say that do not say that things do not exist, but they do say things exist. The way they exist is by way of the conventional renown. So even direct perceptions of form and so forth only view conventionalities and not valid cognitions. Form and so on are false, like worldly acceptance of that, what is unclean is, and so forth, as clean and the like. For the sake of letting the world enter into reality, the guardian taught about things in the ultimate sense. However, they are not momentary, but that is also contradictory conventionally. So in order to lead beings to the final reality of things, of selflessness or emptiness, the Buddha taught to train their mind in impermanence, suffering, and so forth. During his first sermon, which is the teaching on the Four Noble Truths. And then in the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, then the Buddha taught of emptiness. So the first turning of the Dharma wheel teaches the Four Noble Truths. So the momentariness here is not taught for those, just as those who assert there to be some objective existence, but in conventional terms. The conventions of yogis has no fault, otherwise this discernment of the uncleanness of other would be undermined by the world. From the illusion like victorious one, positive forces arise, just as for those believing in true things. But if a sentient being were like an illusion, then how could that he take rebirth once having died? So long as conditions are gathered together, the illusion lasts that long. And how could a sentient being be truly existent merely because his continuum lasts long? So that of the true cessation is attained because the possibility is there because the very nature of the mind itself is empty of any true independent existence, which is that emptiness is called natural liberation. So verse number 13 says, if ultimately someone is released in nirvana and conventionally is circling in samsara, then Buddha as well would be circling in samsara. What use would there be for bodhisattva contacts? So whether the Buddhas appear in the world or not, the way things are will remain. That means that things have no independent existence. The moment something comes into being, it is subject to lack of independent existence. Even an illusion cannot be turned back unless the continuity of its conditions has ceased. Yet, when the continuity of those conditions cease, it does not arise even conventionally. When even the deceptive awareness doesn't exist, by what is the illusion perceived? For you, if the illusion itself does not exist, then what is being perceived? So verse number 17 down shows that of rejection of the mind only school thesis. The guardian of the world in fact said mind cannot see mind. Just as the edge of a sword cannot cut itself, so it is with the mind. So the Chittamatras assert a perception which is called self-awareness, which actually perceives the mind or the perception. And for example, if there is a perception of something, an object, that perception of object, that perception has that self-awareness, and this is rejected. But it is just like the way of the lamp. Flame perfectly illuminates its own characteristics. The flame of a lamp is not being illuminated, since darkness does not obscure. For an intrinsic blue, for an intrinsic blue to be blue, it does not depend on something else, as does a crystal. We see some that depends on others and some that do not. And so the Chittamatras reason out that there is self-cognition of an awareness because we have memory. So because of that experience of having perceived the blue, we are able to say, I saw the blue. So because there is this self-awareness or self-cognition of the perception of a blue color, which is a visual perception, we are able to say that I saw the blue. And therefore, we have that memory. And therefore, they say there must be a self-cognizing mind. But if a self-cognizing mind does not exist, how can consciousness be recalled? Through a connection with experiencing in another, called recollection happens like a rat's poison. So the madhyamakas answered that because of the connection between the perception of a thing and the thing itself, we are able to have memory of things. But it can eliminate itself, because when with other conditions one sees, by means of applying magic eye lotion, our vase is seen, while the eye lotion is not. So verse number 25 says, those which are seen, heard, or known are not to be negated. But what is negated here is the conception of true existence, which is the cause of suffering. So this is to be rejected. The illusion is not separate from the mind, despite being inseparable. It is still impermanent. If it were a thing, how could it be not different? And if it is not different, it could not be a thing. Although the illusion is not truly existent, it is still an object of view. So it is for the viewer. But samsara must have a thing as its support. Otherwise, it would be like space. So what this is saying is, the final two lines are saying is that there must be something objectively existing. Otherwise, it would be like space. How could a non-thing, supported by a truly existent thing, come to have a function? The mind, you asserted, would be something existing alone, accompanied by nothing. And if the mind is free of apprehension, then everyone would be a Tathagata. And if it were the case, what benefit would there be in analyzing mind only? Even upon knowing the illusion, like how do afflictions how are afflictions gotten rid of? Since lust for an illusory woman can arise even in one who conjured her up. So there you should be able to determine that nothing whatever has exists the way they appear to us, but then that they exist, things exist by way of mere designation, and that helps to reduce your attachment and anger and so forth. By habituating with the imprint of emptiness, the tendencies for things will be removed. By habituating with emptiness of all, later he will be rid of that as well. So if the Buddhas were totally absorbed in emptiness, how can they actually serve others? The response is just as a wish-fulfilling gem and a wish-granting tree fulfill all wishes. Likewise, through the power of prayers, the enlightened body of the victor appears to the disciples. For example, when a Garuda healer who empowered healing Khan has passed away, that Khan can pacify poison and the like long after the healer's death. Similarly, when a Bodhisattva has passed to Nirvana after setting up the reliquary of a victor, by conforming to the Bodhisattva's conduct, he still performs all deeds. So he's already stopped at verse number 39. And from verse number 40, he's already hopes to teach next year. So if I tease you, I would like to ask you whether it's more important for you to understand emptiness taught in this chapter on wisdom, or the long life initiation, which is more important. So you would be happy if you receive the You'll be happy to receive the long life initiation so that you can enjoy the nectar and the blessed pills. So we have the Kanjur and Tenjur comprising, the 300 over 300 volumes, 100 volume of Kanjur and 225 volumes of Tenjur, which teach the reality of how things are. And so Buddhism is about understanding reality of things and then transforming one's mind, not through some kind of a prayer or some magical feat that you make transformation within our mind. So it's important to do study of the teaching of the Buddha. Whatever text you may use, whether short or long, doesn't matter. But once you have studied the text, we should be able to do the study and then reflect on the teachings and then apply them in meditation while we are alive, and we are able to do that. Otherwise, when our senses give up, our mind and body give up, then it's difficult to do study. And therefore, in order to have a long life, to be healthy and so forth, and you think of receiving this long life initiation or empowerment,